That says something, doesn't it? Right. So we're now on air, and I'm going to introduce myself to anybody who doesn't know me who's watching this strange affair. So I'm Simon, and I'm sitting in a classroom in Clermont-Ferrand, which is in the middle of France. It's a really beautiful area with the Puy de Dôme, which you can go and have a look at, and I hope that someday you can come and visit because it's just a very beautiful area. Volcanic, volcanoes, cheese, cows, lots of green. So from the city, I've been in Clermont-Ferrand now for half my life, and I think it's because it's home. So I moved the decor a bit. I introduced a yucca, and the yucca is helping me cut a bit of the sunlight on the screen. And we're going to speak with Terry. So Terry, if you want to speak ahead. I'm going to eat a sandwich.
Amp a little bit here while you're eating your sandwich. I'm Terry Elliott. I am living in what's known around here as cave country. The longest cave in the world is Mammoth Cave. And I just went down there this week. Kind of opened my eyes a lot to how we really don't know very much, you know, and the little we do found ignorance of the world. So, you know, I try base here. I teach at a university nearby. Each way, it's you know, I'm interested in a lot of things having to do with rhizomatic learning. You can always hear the roosters when I'm on the hangout. If you don't like them, I'd be happy to. Um,
Hi, kids.
stand in for him, which is pretty interesting because I'm not really sure what he wants. I'm not sure what we're doing. Can you hear me, Keith? Do this.
I can hear you, Terry.
I don't think Keith.
This is an obstacle, Terry.
This is what you do in a hangout sometimes. This has happened many a time for me.
This is an obstacle. This is excellent. Terry, have you ever listened to Lacan? Hello?
I think he went out. The philosophy.
Yeah, psychoanalyst.
Not really.
Okay, because he does a great lecture, and he talks about technology being an obstacle to communication. But I think
Yeah, well,
words are often obstacles to communication.
yeah. I was just going to say words are technology, so I can understand that completely.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Terry. Words are a technology. One of the earliest. Anyway, good morning, fellows.
Hi.
Good morning.
It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to be awake.
That's great to hear you say that, Keith. If only everybody said the same thing at that time in the morning.
Well, you know, it doesn't happen often. 6 o'clock is a little abrupt for me, but that's okay. I
Terry,
did make it.
what time is it in your place? Here it's 12:49.
There you go. I'm 6:49.
Right. And I think
Terry may be 5:49.
I think so, yeah, that's right.
Depending on where in Kentucky he is.
I'm exactly 7 miles from the central eastern time zone divide. So
Which side?
I'm on what they call the slow time
There you go.
this time.
What is slow time?
That's Central Daylight Time, where I am.
Because it's interesting because I never knew these terms. When you talk about Central Daylight Time, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've just discovered with a guy in Sweden that I was in Central European Time. I had no idea.
There you go.
Every time I try to figure out people's time zones, I have to go to one of those Greenwich Mean Time converters. And even then, I don't know why it's so hard for me. It just is.
But this is a great activity. Is learning about where people are and the time.
Well, back
I
when people used to watch TV, and if you were anywhere near, well, did everyone go away? And if you were near a timeline, as Terry seems to be, then you could watch the news twice, and you knew the slow time would be the one that would be afterwards.
I've got a question, Keith, for you, because Terry said something. He said, I'm not sure what we're doing here, which I thought was a really interesting comment. So would you like to try and answer that? What are you doing here at this time in the morning?
I wanted to see you guys. That's it. And I'm a little bit curious about the group that I'm now moderating. I'm not sure what that means, and so you may be able to tell me. But no, I just wanted to get together with some friends I've made and have a cup of coffee. Cheers, and chat and see what's going on. That's all.
And Terry, what's your answer to your question? Hello, Terry?
Yes.
What's your answer to your
I'm
question?
thinking.
You're thinking, okay.
Back and forth since January. Kind of communicating in lots of different ways, creating things and letting that be part of the communication, sometimes commenting. Rich. That's what I want in my classrooms more than anything, is that rich. For them as possible within my means and own experience. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Talk with the smartest people in the room. That's how I learn.
Keith?
Yes.
Comment on that?
Oh, I agree with him. I think, I don't know if you guys stumbled into it, but I feel as if I've sort of stumbled into something wonderful, and that has brought a lot of richness, a lot of texture to what I do day to day. And like Terry, if I could find a way to get that into my classrooms, that would be great. If I don't quite know how to do it in my classroom so well, in part because the people who come to my classrooms tend to do so for very different reasons than I would bring to a MOOC such as Rhizo 14. And part of what I have to do at the beginning is to sort of reform their conceptions about what it is they can do in my classroom. Listen, I'll tell you guys a story. People bring such funny perceptions to the classroom. I remember maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I taught a graduate seminar for a school business program. They wanted to do an IT class, and I did that for them. And it was for medical doctors who wanted to get an MBA, because basically the doctors were in a crisis back at that time, trying to figure out how to make a little more money out of their practices. And they were feeling some pressure from the insurance companies and all. Anyway, all these doctors were coming back to school to get MBAs. And these are very accomplished people, very bright people, people who day in and day out make life and death decisions. So these were not incompetent students. And what struck me is when they came into my class, they turned back into students, by which I mean they became very passive. And they sat there and waited for me to tell them what to do. Now, once I gave them the marching orders, by golly, they were efficient. They nailed it. They knocked it out. They did everything, and they did it spot on. So they were perfect as the note takers, paper writers, test takers, you name it. They could do that stuff. But what they couldn't do was bring their own value to the table. They couldn't see themselves as adding value to the class. They perceived it as the only value coming from me, the teacher, and from the textbook and the other readings that I had them do. That's where the value came from, and it was very difficult to break that mindset with these bright people. My run-of-the-mill students aren't nearly so accomplished or established in their own lives, and so it's even a more difficult task to break them, to get them to see that they have value to add to the class, rather than just sitting there and expecting all the value to flow just one way. Now, that turned into a lot more than I intended to say, and I'm not sure I know what I said, but but I find it very difficult to. One of the things I like so much about, say, RISO 14 is it enabled people to add their value, and it encouraged people to add their value. In fact, my sense of it is that the people who stayed in RISO 14 were those who felt comfortable bringing their value to the conversation.
I'm just going to invite Sandra.
Please do.
If I can find it. All right, that's Sandra.
It's been one of those fortnights. I look 100 years old and do not want to be distracted by that reflection as we talk.
It's very interesting. This morning, Keith, I was speaking with a guy in Sweden called David. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good. And I haven't really used Hangouts before RISO 14.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I did a recorded Hangout, a Hangout on air, was for RISO 14.
Good.
When the thing continued over the 6-week period. So that was the first time. And I think a lot of this is about taking control of the space.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to take control of a space, you first have to identify what the spaces we're talking about.
Well, identify or maybe define. I'm one of the things that struck me about RISO 14 was that often people were confused about what space they were in, and that stopped some people from participating. They just didn't have the energy, for whatever reason, and it might be quite legitimate reasons. They didn't have the energy to define that space for themselves and say, okay, I can work in this place. And so they turn away. And then for whatever reason, Simon and Terry and Keith and Maha and Clarissa and other people decided that they could work in this space, that this was a space that they could own and bring their value to. I'm not sure why that particular group of people did it. I'm glad they did. I suspect I did it because, well, I don't know about you guys, but I had already been having this conversation about rhizomatic education with Cormier and a few other people for, I don't know, a couple of years. So I was comfortable. Not only that, but I've been installing technology for 25 years. So there are very few online spaces that confuse me or intimidate me. So I'm comfortable jumping in and seeing where it will go. That's not a problem for me, and I know it's a problem for a lot of people because I've tried to. I was the guy back when technology was my day job. I teach full time by the way now, so I don't do the technology stuff anymore. But back when it was my day job, it was part of what I did was help faculty members, staff members figure out how to use technology, and wasn't always easy. It was tough. They simply couldn't read the space. They couldn't develop a comfort with being in that space and talking in that space. They didn't know the language. They didn't know the grammar, and they didn't know that the grammar was being made up as they were using it. This, for instance, Hangouts. This is very new. This has been around just for a little while, and people didn't know what to do with it. I remember the very first time I was trying to use video chats. Let's see, I'm trying to remember what program it was. I don't remember now. But it was very awkward. People didn't know how to talk. They talked over each other. Things blinked in and out, and they were very unsure. For instance, right now, is Terry with us? Is he gone? And Simon and I are continuing to talk, and we figure Terry will pop back in, or he might not. Maybe his connection's gone altogether. But back in the old, when this was first starting, that could disrupt the whole conversation as people would stop and talk about, well, is he here? Is he not here? And that became the conversation. And so it was, the conversation was more about the technology and whether it was working or not than about the sorts of things that we're talking about today.
I think it's very interesting what you just said, Keith. A number of aspects I would have to go back and look at, but I'll pick you up on one thing.
Okay.
You said something like, is he here or is he not here?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's, I think, in a space where you have a bunch of people in a classroom, we make assumptions.
Sure.
And that's sufficient for teachers to feel like that they are connecting.
That's a good point. Because I know, and maybe you know, that often you aren't connecting. The person's body is there, but their mind's a million miles away. But I take their physical presence as indication that they are engaged.
Yeah, And I think that then there's the question of what do we consider as engagement and what do we consider as, I just have to go back to the chat, value.
Yeah. Well, in that case, actually, I suppose their physical presence does bring me, the teacher, some value because it enables me to continue on as if I'm doing something when maybe I'm not. Though now that I think about it, that's probably a very limited value. Doesn't seem to take us very far, does it? So I think the classroom space. Here's an interesting thought that just occurred to me. Maybe the reason some of my colleagues object so much to the presence of technology in the classroom, such cell phones or laptops or whatever, is that it exposes the fiction that person there is actually engaged with me, which I can believe if they're not looking at their cell phone or looking at Facebook. I can deceive myself into thinking that, yeah, that person, I'm actually communicating with this person. Whereas if they've got their cell phone out and they're hiding themselves, behind their hand, it becomes obvious that they're not paying any attention to me at all. And that becomes offensive. In the sense if you and I were standing next to each other and I'm trying to tell you something and you keep glancing away, looking at something else, sooner or later I get the idea, this person next to me really doesn't want to talk to me. And when teachers are reminded of that, they become offended. But I suspect most of my students don't want to talk to me.
That's trust issues.
Yeah, there are trust issues.
I mean, natural ones. I mean, why should they trust us, right? Why should they, get Facebook? But why? It's a legit question, especially at the beginning of.
Sure.
All I'm doing is telling them what to do, right?
And along with the trust issues, it seems to me that there's an identity issue, and by identity I mean, do I want to identify in some way with this person? Do I want to be identified with this person? In the way that we choose our friends. I don't mind being identified with this person. And many of my students, I'm an older, short, white male, and most of my students are not. And our experiences, our life experiences, are very different, and it takes a while for them to decide. Now let me back up on that. For many, it takes a lot of work on both their part and mine for them to decide that they want to identify with me, that they want to, and there's trust as part of that, but that they value they value me, enough to say, okay, I can be kind of like this guy. I can be part of this guy. Um, I can identify with this fellow. Um, Now, some of the psychological research that I've been reading says that most people make those decisions within 30 seconds of meeting you. They've decided already whether they want to identify with you or not. It is, that goes back to those 250,000 years ago of evolution, where you decide very, very quickly whether you want to be in the presence of this other creature or not. And it was a life or death decision, so better make it damn fast, because you might not have the opportunity to make it 30 seconds from now. And so we have a very quick emotional response to most people that says, yeah, I can identify with this person or not. I can trust this person or not. And if they decide they don't trust you, it can take a long while to build that trust.
Yeah, for me, trust is let me explain what I teach. I teach mostly at-risk, first-generation college students.
Mm-hmm.
I have a class where it's a composition class. It's for men, and they have no idea skill levels, socially, you know, they're not part of the tribe yet, and if you put any stock by scores, which their scores seem to indicate that they'll have a hard time succeeding their first semester in school. And trust issues are just rampant. Most students get that look in their eye and they say, just tell me how to get that A.
Yeah.
And such on them, there's so much pressure to not disappoint family, friends, communities, because a lot of them are first generation. I feel like, they asked to drive the snakes from Ireland, and it's such a monumental task to drive because it works in every corner. The classroom fairly stinks with it, just because of the and so it's that unlearning struggle, that learning to trust struggle, and unlearning some of the stuff that they default modes that are just a constant struggle. And just one of the things that I'm not trying to reform the classroom in any structural way. I'm trying to restructure the space that we work in together, and in a way building a set of parallel tracks that from what they're used to. And change that I found that I can effect in my classroom. And I think chaos create emergent conditions each other. Sometimes it works, sometimes it. I don't. You know, it really is a mystery, and it's a wonderful mystery, but it's appalling and fail to observe. I fail the most is when or the hardest is when I am not keenly observing what's going on. I don't have a clue as to what. So, you know, that's where I am as a teacher. I'm at the micro level constantly, and you know, this is, and see, does it reflect the theory I have? That's why I like conversations like this, because it makes me pull back. It makes me see, because I think theory is ultimately the most practical filter that we can apply. And obviously, they have to go back and forth. And I think that's what Jim Groom, in that latest video of his, where he talks about the origins of jokes, and out of that practice rose some principles, some maybe theoretical principles that can be applied to others. And I think that's practice they're involved in, and that's what I do too. You know, my practice informs my theory, but it's hard to draw back to the, you know, what's going on. Yeah, going on. It's roosters in the background.
Okay, I have to ask, do I hear chickens?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the we rescued some hens a few years ago. I don't know. It's one of those moments in life where you either think human beings are they just suck, or like, okay, I'm going to be you got unintended consequences. We've never been able to figure out what they are. They is survivors, and is lightly colored. They stand a greater chance of being snacked. They're eggless, prolific. They hide their eggs, and every once in a while out will pop a hen, and she'll have 13, 14 little chicks behind her. So that's why we have so many hens, is because they've all gone, most of them come a little closer during the day because there are all kinds of cool things to eat. So, hence the roosters, hence the chickens.
Cool.
Somewhere I can't for the life of me figure it out. Yes, they do come. The chickens do come. They love our garden.
And the garden benefits from them.
I don't know how to put that. It does, until they start eating the tomatoes. then all bets are off. When they start eating the tomatoes, that's when we start eating chicken.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where are you hanging out from?
Are you asking me, Terry? I missed
Yeah,
half of
yeah.
that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida.
It's moving towards you, don't you?
Say that again. I only got a part of it.
You've got a tropical storm moving towards you right now?
Yeah, I think they're queuing up in the Atlantic. I think there's several. At least it seems so from last night's news report. Um, I think there are a couple of them out there, and probably we'll get some wind or something this season. It's hurricane season, and we should get something. My wife is from the Bahamas, and which is one of the reasons we're living here now. Uh, this feels more like home to her, um, and so she's accustomed to hurricanes. That's just been a part of her life. That's what you do each fall. You go back to school and you have a hurricane.
My understanding is only informed by the knowledge. So that tells you where I'm coming from. Ignorance.
Well, hurricanes are a pretty good thing to be ignorant of. They can be nasty. If you're going to choose your ignorances, that's a good one. You don't want to be anywhere near them. they, they can get out of hand very quickly.
Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Virginia, the Appalachian Mountains, you know.
Yeah, they insulate you guys. Of
Here.
course, every once in a while, one of those storms, will wander inland, and the wind dies down, but they can bring in a huge amount of water, and they can just sit and drench a place, and then you've got flooding to deal with. I know that happened back in the mid-90s. I've forgotten what storm it was now. Anyway, it was a hurricane, went around the west side of Florida and came up through the Gulf of Mexico and crossed the panhandle of Florida and into Georgia. And that part, into central Georgia and Alabama, and that part usually doesn't see much of hurricanes. And this just sat over the central Georgia and central Alabama and drenched them, and they had flooding, across 2 states, serious flooding. It was quite grim, and they didn't get much wind. They didn't get any of the fun part. They just got soaked. Of course, you think the wind's the fun part until it's up to around 140 miles an hour, and then it's not fun anymore. It's
Keith,
brutal. Yes.
can you give me a picture of grim flooding?
Yes. In Albany, Georgia, where I happened to work for a couple of years, actually. At one period. In Albany, Georgia, the flooding was so serious it overflowed the banks of the Flint River, and it gutted a number of cemeteries, so that there were scenes of people out running around, I mean, going around in their boats trying to catch caskets that were floating down the river. That's grim. Uh, it just
it sounds hilarious from my perspective.
it does from this perspective. It just sounds funny, but those people were they were upset. They didn't want their dead people floating away. They wanted to keep them where they were, and it was. They eventually had the National Guard out down there trying to capture these caskets, and it was, it was just. It's something that if you weren't there, it was farcical.
Did anybody die trying to capture a casket?
Not that I know of. Only those who were already dead were the only casualties, I think. But apparently, some people thought that would be a great loss, and they were keenly interested in recapturing their loved ones and putting them back in the ground. So yeah, that was grim at the time. Of course, like most grim things from this distance, it's just funny. You can. It's the only way to think about it now.
Yeah, there's I don't have anything as grim as that, but
I get the grim award for the day.
I haven't tried grim yet.
Yeah, that's grim. Actually, the houses floating down the river is perhaps a little more grim because those people are still alive, and you hate to see that kind of destruction. So, yeah, that kind of flooding can be tough to deal with. And in South Florida, we get flooding all the time. We're so low. We're just barely above sea level.
Say again, Keith.
I said in South Florida, we're just barely above sea level, so we get flooded all the time. We're accustomed to it here. We just, we've got the Everglades to the west of us, and the Atlantic Ocean to the east of us, and there's just about a little sliver of 10 to 12 miles where everybody lives, and it's just about 2 feet above where all that water is. It's a nice 2 feet. It's pretty, but it's not very high, and the water sloshes over from time to time. It's actually a critical 2 feet.
Like New Orleans. Only New Orleans is like a beach, right? It's not even above sea level.
Exactly. And those people struggle all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I like the expression critical 2 feet.
Well, sometimes it comes down to a very thin edge. And yeah, I'm still reading about chaos theory. So uh, I was just reading last night about critical cascades in the brain, and what a narrow edge that the brain has to maintain between a sort of static order and absolute chaos. And it's that very narrow space where there's this tension between too much order, which freezes the brain, and too much chaos, which freezes. It doesn't freeze it; it overheats the brain, and you can't think in either place. If your brain's frozen, you can't think, and if your brain's too lively, too active, you can't think. You've got, but that little space between frozen order and hot chaos is very narrow, and we all have those experiences where we slip into one space or the other. We fall off the high wire, and our thinking goes wonky. Um, there's not much space there. It's a critical 2 feet, and maintaining it is tough. Um,
Can we speak about critical 2 feet in a classroom?
um, yeah. The way I would think about it just now is that there is a boundary between the too structured, which freezes everybody, doesn't allow people to play, but then there's also that white hot space in which things are just chaotic, and no one has any sense of what's going on, or whether we're moving forward, backward, or moving any place at all. We're just frenetic and frenzied. And I think all of us have, at one time or another, been in such a space. For me, the most common has been in too highly structured a space, and I think that's what I'm reacting against when I find a space like Rhizo 14. It's more open, and I like it. But for a lot of people, Rhizo 14 is too open, too frenzied, too scattered, too smudged, and they can't make sense of it, and they become frustrated and leave. So while I appreciate the drive of many to want to be open to everybody, open to join also means open to leave. If it's not working for you, then the best thing to do is to leave. And I know in a lot of MOOCs, I've checked in, and for whatever reason, because of the way the MOOC's going, or because of the way my life or work schedule is going, it just doesn't work for me. And the best thing for me to do is to check out. And I don't think anybody still in the MOOC should feel guilty about that, or to feel that they in some way are responsible for me leaving. Most of the time they aren't. Uh, they would have to be egregiously rude and threatening uh, to be the cause of me leaving. Um, I would not be offended. I don't get offended at much.
Yeah, me neither. I think that's an occupational skill, occupational trait you have to have.
I agree, Terry.
And the capacity to be rude sometimes, and to confuse, and to do all those within a couple of sentences, you know.
Sure.
And then see what happens. And see what happens.
Yeah, throw it out there.
You know, I'm really struck by this idea of ecosystem of things being too open or too closed. I mentioned in the comments about birds how some birds can't function unless they have meadows, and some birds can't function. Both.
Sure.
Many, but and oftentimes birds that can do both are predators, like owls and hawks and animals that live high on the food chain. And I guess that's where the analogy falls apart.
Well, one of the nice distinctions that I find in McGilchrist, Ian McGilchrist, who wrote the book, what is it, The Master and His Emissary? He makes the distinction between left brain, which tends to, in fact, he uses an image of the hand, which I really like, because he says the left hand uses, left brain uses the hand to grasp and manipulate for its own purposes. And that's important. We need to know how to do that. But the right brain uses the hand to connect, to reach out, to understand, to know, basically to connect with others, and to form relationships. And I think most of us are very comfortable being used by others, being of use to others, so long as we believe or have faith that they are also interested in connection and relationship. But when we sense that they want only to manipulate us for their own benefit, with little or no regard for the relationship they might form with us, then we become insulted and or maybe afraid even, and we lose trust and we back away from them. We need to have that sense, I think, that we have a whole relationship with people. Yes, I am of use. I can join Rhizo 14. I need to bring my value. I need to let others avail themselves of that value, to use me in ways during the class. But if all they're doing is using me for their benefit, and they're not reciprocating, there's no, and it's not reciprocating in that they're paying me or whatever, but it's reciprocating in the sense that there's a relationship, that there's a sense that they're open for me to come back later when it might be my turn to use whatever value it is that they have. If we don't have that faith, we back off. You know, if we all had the sense that Dave Cormier was just doing RISO 14 to gather research data and didn't care what happened to us afterwards, probably we wouldn't have been as energetic as we were. We wouldn't have been as interested. But I think, at least for me, he communicated that he was genuinely interested in getting to know us and in being available for us to get to know him. So there was equal emphasis put on the relationship as well as the manipulation. And by the way, I'm not knocking manipulation. I think we need to be of use to people. I need to be of use to my students, and I need for them to be able to use me, not abuse me, but certainly to be useful to them. Might be the better way to say it. And if I'm of no use to anybody, I don't have much value. So manipulation is not bad as long as it's accompanied by and informed by relationship. I don't think. At least that's the way it seems to me right now. And I know Simon said something to spark all that, and I don't remember what it was. What'd you say, Simon?
I can't remember.
No, it's my normal wake-up alarm. So now I'm awake. And guys, I am going to have to break it off. I've got a task to do this morning, and I've got to have to take my car, and I need to be there in about to get the oil changed, and I'm supposed to be there in about 15 minutes. So I'm going to put on some pants. You don't see that, but I need some pants on, and
too much information.
I'm with you. Well, I do have shorts. I mean workout shorts, but.
Okay.
So I'm going to go change that and head off to.
This could be a world exclusive, Keith.
It could be, but I'm going to close the screen before I stand up.
You are on air in your pants.
Anyway, this has been fun. I've enjoyed it, and I thank you for including me. This is part of the relationship, and it's what makes people willing to do this. And for me, it's what makes me willing to be of use to people. Anyway, it was good. So I'm going to ring off. You guys enjoy, and I'll check in with you later.
Hooray for Keith!
Yay!
Very interesting. Very interesting. This is a rare moment, Terry.
In what way?
Because it's not often that one can have a conversation which there isn't an agenda on the table. And it emerges.
Yeah, it's a gift, you know. When I did CL MOOC this summer, I did several ad hoc hangouts. Reluctant, very reluctant to do them. I was a bit surprised that people I thought would jump right on it. They didn't like. I mean, these were sometimes they had some sort of mild focus to them, but oftentimes they were let's just talk about this particular thing, or something would come up in a post, and I said let's do a hangout together, and it was like, I don't want to see myself. There was a zillion excuses, and I should have just pushed through it. But it's everybody has their excuses, and so I'm all for ad hoc shit, and yeah, you're right. It is rare. It is rare.
But I think the other thing which is rare is that we have captured it, and not only have we captured the conversation, but the conversation has been going on at a number of different levels. Because you have the text which is going on, which is emerging from the conversation.
Right. And sometimes because and for some whatever reason, that's the only place I could engage. Was I could listen, but couldn't speak very without the severe lag. So yeah, there's that too.
There's what you
there's
just
history.
said. Yeah, there's access to the space. How you can access the space. And there are perhaps other people in this space we're not aware of.
Yeah, there's all those hidden connections that they're always there. We talk about some people the idea of lurking. They just don't like it. They don't like it. Alan Levine is just hates the word lurking. Just doesn't even think it's a useful term.
That's a really important question that you just raised. Is lurking? Alan Levine doesn't like the word, and we come back to the question of engagement. What represents engagement?
So, I mean, it's just a failure of our imaginations to not realize that we're already, even now as we speak, connected, or it's just that it might be asynchronous. The hangout gets published, somebody takes a look at it, skims through it, to anybody else, or they get mad and they do something else, or they go kill somebody. I mean, we have not the faintest, and this is the way nature works too. Those little mycorrhizae are moving towards each other, and their edges begin to meet. Is it war? Is it symbiosis? Is it, it's just the profound feeling I get when I turn over a rock and realize that there's more there than all of humanity can understand, and all of the generations that we've already. This notion of discriminating that science is so good at is just sometimes it paralyzes me. Right? When I talk about humility, I'm serious. This is a paralyzing kind of humility about the connections that exist in the world that you don't even know about and will never know about. The unknown unknowns that are just floating around out there. I love it, and it scares the hell out of me too. Yeah, and all can be fear as well as love. I think. I'd have to think about that.
I think you've just given me a definition of awe.
Yeah, it's true. When you are awestruck, neither can you move nor do you wish to move. You just are. You could replace the W in awe with an R.
You were first.
Say again?
You were first, Terry.
Okay.
You were quicker than me because I typed the same thing.
That's a rare thing. I usually need time to think.
I suggest if you agree, that's a pretty good conclusion.
Agreed.
Okay, so for anybody who's still watching, we decided together to stop.
Agreed. Enjoy the rest of your day, Simon.
Thank you very much. We'll be in touch, I hope.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.